Okay, so let's unpack this. The whole character of 21st century conflict, it feels like it's undergone this just fundamental transformation.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
We aren't talking about massed armored formations battling across open fields anymore.
Not at all.
Really?
Not at all. We are talking about asymmetric combat, and it's being redefined entirely by, low-cost, scalable technology.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into that drone revolution. We want to focus specifically on the systemic implications of platforms like, say, the Iranian Shahed, and really get into why the established Western military-industrial complex is, well, scrambling to catch up.
And what's fascinating here, and a little terrifying, is that this is no longer some emerging threat. It's a present reality.
It's here now.
It's here now. The reports we analyze show a huge acceleration of this trend right through December 2025, and now requires immediate G7 coordination. This is a front and center policy crisis.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This is where the strategic acknowledgement of this shift just becomes undeniable. The United States itself deployed its first operational squadron of Shahed 136 clones.
Oh.
They're calling it the LUCAS. That's the Low-Cost Uncrewed Combat Attack System. And they sent it to the Middle East under Task Force Scorpion Strike in December 2025.
That is a watershed moment.
Wait, let's just stop there for a second. Are you telling me the most technologically advanced military in the world has officially adopted the enemy's blueprint? They built their own cheap, disposable cruise missile.
That's precisely what it means. That deployment is a tacit admission that the whole doctrine of relying only on these exquisite multi-million-dollar systems is, well, it's obsolete in this new era.
So the asymmetric drone paradigm is now what defines contemporary conflict.
It does, and even the U.S. has to play the quantity game now.
So our mission today is to analyze the frankly shocking strategic economics of this shift, this fiscal attack, if you will. We'll explore the sophisticated partnerships driving the mass proliferation of this tech and look at the intense technological and industrial race to close that gap.
Sounds good.
The core of this transformation, as we've said, is the cost exchange asymmetry. This is where the old rulebook, the one based on expensive aircraft and guided missiles, is just being absolutely shredded.
Let's get into the numbers, because this is the critical system-level insight.
Please.
A Shahed 136 costs adversaries between, say, $20,000 and $50,000 to produce. The new U.S. Ilyusades variant, by the way, costs about $35,000.
Okay, so cheap.
Very cheap. Now, you have to contrast that with the cost of defensive interceptors. These range from hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars for a single high-end Patriot missile.
The economic math is honestly stark when you see it laid out like that. Imagine defending against a wave of, say, 400 Shahed drones.
Right.
Using those expensive Patriot interceptors, the total cost for the defense would hit approximately $1.6 billion.
And the attacking force. They expended maybe $4 million, and their goal isn't even to hit every target, it's to force the defender to bankrupt themselves.
It's an engine of attritional warfare. It lets adversaries impose economically unsustainable losses on resources just through sheer volume.
And we've seen this doctrine mature operationally in real time. Russia's sustained operational tempo against Ukraine since the summer of 2025 really demonstrates the kind of volume they can sustain.
What are those numbers?
The reports show they launch consistently around 5,375 drones a month. In November 2025 alone, they hit 5,447.
Which averages out to?
An average of 182 drones launched every single day. That's the kind of continuous pressure we're talking about.
And you have to look beyond just the military metrics of, what was damaged. These persistent nightly attacks impose continuous operational strain and, of course, immense psychological pressure on the population.
Absolutely. While the individual Shahed effectiveness was generally low in November 2025, around 11.5 to 18.7% target engagement, that's almost beside the point.
Because of the scale.
Exactly. The data shows that when they concentrated attacks, hitting with 100 to 200 drones in a single night, the effectiveness jumped to 40 or 50%. They just overwhelmed the defensive capacity during these critical windows.
That's the definition of weaponizing vulnerability, isn't it? Even if you're successful 80% of the time on defense, the 20% that gets through still costs you billions to defend against, causes real damage, and it has these cascading effects on civilian morale and the economy.
It's an economically calculated strike.
So we've established the economics favor the aggressor. Volume wins. Now let's pivot to the production line. Who is supplying this scale, and how are they funding it? Because this isn't just about technology, it's about these sophisticated industrial partnerships, particularly between sanctioned states.
Right. And the focus here has to be on the Iran-Russia partnership. This is far beyond a simple transaction. It's active co-development.
What do you mean by that?
Well, for example, a Shahed 136 MS that was recovered in Ukraine in June of 2025. It shows some serious upgrades. It had AI-assisted targeting, military-grade communications, and enhanced anti-jamming tech.
All developed jointly?
All developed jointly. They are continuously improving the product based on battlefield lessons, and that partnership is becoming highly industrialized.
You're talking about the Alabuga facility?
Yes, Russia's Alabuga Special Economic Zone facility in Tatarstan. It's already moved into its third phase. The goal is full-scale local manufacturing with a capacity to build 6,000 drones annually by mid-2025.
That is a massive number.
Yeah.
It must require a huge financial infrastructure to support it.
Which brings us to sanctions evasion. The financial architecture here relies on these incredibly sophisticated methods to get around U.S. dollar dependence. We are seeing transactions involving physical commodities like gold ingots.
You're kidding? Gold.
Not at all. One documented transfer used $104 million in gold to facilitate these deals. And they exploit legal loopholes. The reports specifically call out the use of UAE free zone establishments.
For listeners who don't follow this, can you explain what those are?
They're basically areas that allow for extremely easy and opaque registration of shell companies. It makes it nearly impossible for Western intelligence agencies to track the flow of money and components.
And this cooperation isn't just limited to drones.
Not anymore. In December 2025, Russia launched 3 Iranian satellites into orbit. This shows an expanding collaboration that goes into the vital space domain. It suggests a much deeper, long-term strategic alliance.
Meanwhile, Iran is still innovating. They unveiled the Shahed 107 in June 2025. It's a newer model, smaller warhead, shorter range. But what's really interesting is how fast the defensive reaction cycle is now.
You mean the FPVs?
Exactly. The first confirmed downing of that new Shahed 107, which happened on December 30th, 2025, was achieved by Ukrainian FPV interceptor drones.
And for context, FPV means first-person view. These are generally cheap, commercial-style racing drones adapted for military use. An operator with goggles is flying it like a high-speed video game.
So they're literally fighting cheap offense with cheap, skilled defense.
Precisely.
So if Iran provides the strategic model for this kind of warfare, then we have to talk about China. Because China provides the industrial scale, creating a major strategic vulnerability for the West.
Absolutely. I mean, China's drone market is projected to surpass 180 billion yuan in 2025. They hold nearly 70% of the global commercial drone market.
And they dominate 80 to 90% of global drone production. That's already a massive industrial apparatus.
More critically, they control the supply chains for key components. The rare earth minerals, the microchips, these are absolutely vital for modern defense applications. Whether they're being used by the U.S. or its adversaries, that gives them immense leverage.
You mentioned scale. Let me just hit you with the key statistic from the source on this, because this is truly mind-boggling. It just illustrates the difference in industrial capacity.
Go for it.
Critically, Chinese civilian factories could retool within 1 year to produce 1 billion weaponized drones annually.
1 billion.
1 billion. And get this, using under 1% of their existing assembly capacity.
1 billion. Just think about that for a second. That single number changes the calculus of global readiness entirely.
Right.
No Western military, structured the way it is now, can ever hope to counter that kind of industrial output with $4 million interceptor missiles.
It's impossible. And that reality is exactly why the American pivot, the LUVS deployment we talked about, is such a fundamental strategic acknowledgement. The doctrine of quality over quantity needs an urgent revision.
It's a massive, immediate shift in their procurement strategy.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. Army is now planning to procure at least 1 million drones over the next 2 to 3 years.
1 million.
And then rising to annual purchases of 500,000 to millions after that. I mean, that is a steep exponential increase from the roughly 50,000 units they currently have fielded. They're gearing up for that billion drone scenario.
And the integration is happening fast. The USS Santa Barbara successfully test-launched a LUVS drone at sea on December 16, 2025. So they're moving these mass-producible, expendable systems from concept to capability at breakneck speed.
As they should be.
Okay, so we have a clear picture of the scale of the offensive threat. How is the West fighting back against this overwhelming volume? The defensive revolution seems to be layered. It's a mix of cheap kinetic interceptors and these breakthrough energy weapons that could finally solve the cost exchange problem.
The initial And most effective response has been to fight fire with fire. Those cheap kinetic interceptor drones, like the FPVs we discussed.
Right.
Ukrainian forces reported back in July 2025 that 9 out of 10 Shahed drones shot down were because of these interceptor drones.
And the West is scaling up its own versions. Systems like the American Merops, which uses a $15,000 surveyor drone, that's been highly effective.
It has. Deployed along NATO's eastern flank, the system achieved over 1,000 successful intercepts with an incredible 95% success rate. These low-cost drones are becoming the workhorse of counter-drone defense.
But the true game changer, for the economics anyway, has to be directed energy.
Yes. Directed energy weapons have moved from sci-fi concept to genuine necessity because they offer an almost perfect cost exchange solution. The UK's Dragonfire laser system, for instance, is a 50-kilowatt class laser they expect to field from 2027.
And the economics are just amazing. British trials in 2025 showed that radio frequency systems could disable large numbers of drones at the same time, with reported engagement costs measured in, well, in pennies.
You absolutely cannot beat that exchange rate against an adversary spending tens of thousands of dollars per strike.
The U.S. is fielding platforms too, right?
Oh yeah, multiple. The Army's DMS ORAD, the Air Force's THAAR high-power microwave system, it's all part of this necessary layered defense strategy.
However, despite all these tech advances, the source outlines a fundamental inadequacy that's been exposed in Western defense industrial models. They're all predicated on low-rate production of exquisite, expensive systems.
That's the doctrinal gap that keeps senior officials up at night.
The technology might be there, but the industrial base is not.
It's exactly. NATO's senior military officials emphasize that counter-drone tech has to be fielded in months in a multi-domain approach, not years. Former Commander Ben Hodges assessed that NATO has not even mentally prepared for daily strikes involving hundreds of aircraft.
We're designed to build a few perfect systems.
And the threat requires massive numbers of cheap, disposable ones. The speed of the adversary's industrial base is now the biggest threat.
So, given this acceleration and this huge industrial threat, what immediate actions are being proposed? This goes way beyond just building more defenses. It requires a complete industrial base restructuring.
The policy framework calls for immediate action, so within the next year. Policymakers need to establish emergency procurement authorities to scale up low-cost interceptor drone acquisition. They're targeting monthly production rates of 10,000-plus units across the G7 nations.
That's industrial mobilization we haven't seen since the Cold War.
It is. And those high-power microsystems have to be prioritized for swarm defense along critical infrastructure immediately. You need those penny-cost solutions to counter the volume before you even worry about intercepting every single drone.
And midterm, in the 1 to 3 year window.
The focus has to be on industrial base restructuring, establishing surge capacity that enables, say, a 10x production increase within 90 days. And crucially, the G7 has to eliminate dependencies on adversary-controlled supply chains for critical components.
Rare earths, semiconductors.
All of it. Securing supply corridor diversification is paramount.
And finally, we have to talk about sanctions, because sanctions alone are clearly failing to stop the flow of components.
They are. We need enhanced intelligence cooperation, coordinated legal action, and serious diplomatic pressure on jurisdictions that enable this circumvention, specifically calling out those UAE free zone establishments that provide the financial cover.
The strategic imperative here seems unambiguous.
It is. Traditional defense paradigms that are predicated on exquisite, low-rate production. They are obsolete. The drone revolution rewards those who innovate rapidly and produce at scale. Failure to recognize that reality risks strategic irrelevance, regardless of your conventional military superiority.
So what does this all mean? The rise of mass production drone warfare means the strategic map has already been redrawn. It demands a fundamental mindset transformation from the democratic world.
Right. It's about accepting cheap, disposable weapons like the LUCAs as a primary operational platform, not just some afterthought.
And the documents outline a long-term goal for the West.
They do. To develop credible offensive drone swarm capabilities to threaten adversary critical infrastructure, basically as a deterrent. And this raises an important question for you, the listener, to mull over. If the ultimate goal is stability, how do nations reconcile the urgent need for a potent offensive drone deterrence capability with the simultaneous necessity of establishing binding international frameworks that limit destabilizing drone proliferation? It's a really tricky balance between offense, defense, and international norms in a world now dominated by cheap, lethal technology.